This is the Commander's Beacon, and I'm Eric. And we'd like to discuss some unconventional ways that you might build your commander deck, kind of like running up the down escalator, just because you can. So, Golos. Golos is probably the most versatile 5-color commander ever. But is it possible to take even greater advantage of this versatility? Golos, everyone's favorite Tireless Pilgrim, is the head of over 4,000 decks on EDHREC at the time of this recording. Man, that guy is tireless. And there's a ridiculous 45 different themes, ranging from cantrips to mutate, dragon tribal, stacks, politics, even golem tribal. Golos isn't even a golem! So you already know Golos' strong points. He's a 3/5 legendary artifact creature, Scout, which costs 5 generic mana. When he enters the battlefield, you search your library for any land, now that's not limited to basics, and you put it onto the battlefield tapped. And for Wooburg plus 2 generic mana, you exile the top 3 cards of your library, and until in turn you can play those cards without paying their mana costs. So Golos has a lot going on, and his impressive EDHREC numbers are not undeserved. First, he gives your deck access to all 5 colors, and yet he casts for only colorless mana. That means you literally have complete freedom to build whatever colors you want and still cast Golos. Want a 5-color deck? Fine. Want an Orza vampire deck with a splash of blue just for fun? Golos accommodates. If there's a deck you want to build that needs specific colors and you can't find the right commander, there's a good chance that Golos is actually the right commander. Second, Golos is somewhat hard to deal with. Every time you cast him, he ramps you for half of his next commander tax. Your opponents likely won't even want to kill him unless you're threatening his activated ability. And thirdly, that activated ability is no joke. One of the most popular builds is a sort of Narset big spells deck, except unlike Narset you don't actually need to attack to get the free spells, and you can do it multiple times per turn if you have the mana, or Illusionist Bracers, and you get all 5 colors. But I'm really here to talk about Golos' land fetching enter the battlefield trigger. Now, not surprisingly, another common Golos deck is the Maze's End deck. Golos can find Maze's End for you along with any other gate you need, and he supports every color needed to play those gates. Golos is definitely the commander that Maze's End has been waiting for. But remember, Golos can fetch any land. Over its 25-plus year history, Magic the Gathering has a massive number of really unique build-around-me lands that you won't be able to find reliably on any given commander game. Until Golos, that is. So today I'm going to give you my top 10 non-basic lands to build your next Golos deck around. First, some honorable mentions. Gaia's Cradle, Cabal Coffers, and Cabal Stronghold, Nykthos, Tireless Sanctum. I think it goes without saying that all of these big mana lands are extremely good. There are countless things you can do with bucket loads of mana, so these lands are honorable mentions because they're too obvious to be worth talking about further. Next is Dark Depths. Dark Depths enters the battlefield with 10 ice counters on it. You can pay 3 generic mana to remove an ice counter from Dark Depths, and when it has no ice counters on it, you sacrifice it and create Wirewood Lodge, a legendary 2020 black avatar creature token with flying and indestructible. While Wirewood Lodge is always good, building around it is probably too much of a one-trick pony move that's kind of risky for Commander, especially given the prevalence of exile-based removal. And next, the Tron lands. Tron, for some reason, refers to the set of 3 Urza lands, Urza's Tower, Urza's Mine, and Urza's Power Plant. These all tap for 1 colorless mana, but if you control all 3 lands at the same time, the Mine and the Power Plant tap for 2, and the Tower taps for 3 colorless. While I really want to like this set, the payoff is not really that great in Commander, giving you 7 colorless mana from 3 lands, and if you have no other sources of non-basic land fetching, you'll need to cast Golos up to 3 times just to get this online, so not so great. So with that out of the way, let's get to the top 10 list. Coming in at number 10, we have Starlit Sanctum. So Starlit Sanctum taps for a colorless mana. You can also pay a white and tap it and sacrifice a cleric to gain life equal to that cleric's toughness. And you can pay a black and tap and sacrifice a cleric to have target player lose life equal to that cleric's power. First of all, Cleric Tribal got a decent amount of support in Zendikar Rising, and White-Black is already good at sacrificing creatures and it's good at graveyard recursion. You're pretty much only going to play this land in Cleric Tribal, and while it's a decent sacrifice outlet, there aren't too many high-power clerics to make the black and tap effect worth it. The white and tap life gain effect is fine, but most of the time that won't win you games. Now, obviously having a relevant sack outlet for your Academy Rector is great, but there's plenty of other clerics that like to die too, see False Prophet, for example. But what about weaponizing our clerics? Loxodon Life Chanter gets power and toughness equal to 4 plus your life total for a fairly steep 6 mana to cast and another 6 mana to activate, but then you can sack it to annihilate target player, or alternatively more than double your life total. Bishop of Binding can also get temporarily big and then sack to hit an opponent hard. Custody Soulbinders can do similar tricks depending on the board state. The new Cleric of Life's Bond can grow fast and act like a time bomb. And if you're playing around with sacrifice outlets anyways, the new Tabarax can perform similarly well. At number 9 we have Emeria the Sky Ruin. Emeria taps for 1 white mana and enters the battlefield tapped. It also has, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 7 or more planes, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now this is a cool effect, but only getting it once per turn limits the combo potential. You're also limited to mostly white, and it doesn't turn on until you have 7 planes. After going through all of this trouble, you might just decide you'd rather play Teshar. That said, being able to reanimate bigger CMC creatures does give this some value. I wouldn't build this deck solely around enter the battlefield effects though. White also has access to some of the best blink effects and those might work better. Instead, this deck can be focused around self-mill and reanimation in white, or maybe heavy board destruction while Emeria allows you to rebuild your board state better than everyone else. That said, the classic Revelark and Karmic Guide fit well in any deck that has white and has creatures, and they fit well here too. Reanimating a single one of these with Emeria after you wipe the board can chain you into bringing several creatures back. Speaking of wiping the board, Cataclysmic Gearhulk does that for you, then you can sacrifice itself to its own triggered ability and let it sit patiently in the graveyard until you need it again. For redundancy, look at cards like Magister of Worth. Now, if you need to fill your graveyard, Altar of Dementia fits perfectly. You can even start off by sacking your commander, Golos, sending him to the graveyard, then reanimating him next upkeep, or anything better you happen to have found. Wand of Vertebrae can help too. It's a bit slow, but at least it's cheap. And if your opponents kill Emeria, the second ability lets you get it back and then tutor it out again with Golos. At number 8, we have Eye of Ugin. Eye of Ugin is unusual in that it doesn't tap for mana. It has a static ability that makes all of your Eldrazi spells cost 2 generic mana less to cast, and you can pay 7 generic mana and tap it to search your library for a colorless creature card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Eldrazi decks often run a metric ton of ramp, and then they can exhaust their hand pretty quickly. With Golos, you can fetch Eye of Ugin once you get to 5 mana. Adding another 7 mana to tutor something to your hand is costly, but if you have enough ramp, it could be worth it. And what are we tutoring to our hand? There's nothing too surprising here. Blightsteel Colossus will be on your short list. You could tutor and flash in an Ancient Stone Idol in response to a big attack if you want to be cute, but it probably won't save you if you're being attacked by that many creatures. Of course, if you've got ludicrous amounts of mana, you could cast Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, to draw 4 cards, sack it to something silly like Ashnod's Altar or Fling, then tutor it up to do it all again. If you're playing artifacts, Golos can get your Eye of Ugin, which can then get you a possibly free Mycosynth Golem, after which you can promptly drop everything in your hand onto the board. You can even put in Silver Bullet obstacles to slow your opponents down from killing you, like Platinum Angel or Platinum Empyrean. Now, these cards are not terribly great in Commander, but they get better when you can tutor them out when you need them. At number 7, we have Contested Cliffs. Contested Cliffs taps for 1 colorless mana. You can also pay red, green, and tap it to have target beast you control fight target creature an opponent controls. Now, red and green struggles a bit with creature removal, and Beast Tribal struggles to exist in the first place, so this kills 2 birds with 1 stone, I think? So what kind of beasts work well here? Bootnipper kills whatever it wants, though it probably dies in the process. Spearbreaker Behemoth kills anything with 5 or less toughness and lives to do it again. Phantom Nishoba heals you up a bit, it can fight several times without dying. Spiritmonger gets bigger when it fights, and it won't even die if you can pay the regenerate cost. And Coalhauler Swine wipes out small targets while group slugging the table a little bit. Contested Cliffs might be relatively straightforward, but it does give a definite versatility boost to both Beast Tribal and Gruul. At number 6 we have Wirewood Lodge. Wirewood Lodge taps for 1 colorless mana, and you can pay green and tap it to untap target elf. Now hear me out. Lots of elves can tap to great effect. This doubles one of them per turn, and it lets you do things that would normally be color restricted if you were playing mono green or mono white elves or something. You can double your Deathrite Shaman activations, Elvish Piper is twice as scary, and Immaculate Magistrate buffs your team twice as fast. Elvish Archdruid, Marwyn the Nurturer, and Priest of Titania tap for bucket loads of mana twice. But I really think the biggest advantage for playing Wirewood Lodge is getting to play all 5 colors in your Elf tribal deck, and Golos still supports the tribe by fetching this land. Coming in at number 5, we have Alchemist's Refuge. Alchemist's Refuge taps for 1 colorless mana, and you can pay green and blue and tap it, and then you may cast non-land cards this turn as though they had flash. Have you ever wanted to play 5-color Wrath Compassion that's harder to remove? Having to pay a 3 mana tax is significant, but trying to protect Wrath from removal and being limited to blue-white is also significant. Alchemist's Refuge is kind of like a Vidalcan Orrery or Leyline of Anticipation that costs less to cast, but it costs more each turn that you use it. And it doubles as a land when you don't need flash. Now, I get it. The Orrery and the Leyline are far more effective at letting you skip ever casting anything on your turn, but Alchemist's Refuge will give you redundancy that you can reliably tutor out of your deck using Golos. Now, with reliable flash, you can do silly things in all 5 colors that would normally be limited to decks that either include blue or happen to chance upon their Vidalcan Orrery, like flash out Ob Nixilis Unshackled when your opponent craps their Fabled Passage. You jerk. There are so many silly things you can do when your entire 5-color deck has flash that we can't describe them all here. Number 4 is Glacial Chasm. Glacial Chasm doesn't tap for mana. It has cumulative upkeep, pay 2 life, and when it comes into play, sacrifice a land. It also has creatures you control can't attack, and prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. This lets you play Group Slug, except you don't hit yourself. Drop Golos on turn 4 or 5, then drop your Group Slug cards turn 6. Congratulations, everyone dies except you. Mana Barbs deals 1 damage to any player that taps a land for mana, except you of course. Burning Earth does the same thing to anyone that taps a non-basic land. Spell Shock deals 2 damage to a player whenever they cast a spell. And Spiteful Visions causes each player to draw an additional card during their upkeep, but deals 1 damage to them whenever they draw a card. Again, except you. You get the extra cards, of course, just not the damage. When you have ready access to Glacial Chasm, you can probably burn out the whole table well before the cumulative upkeep kills you. At number 3 we have 3 similar lands: Academy Ruins, Unholy Grotto, and Hall of Heliod's Generosity. Each of these lands taps for 1 colorless mana and lets you repeatedly return a specific card type from your graveyard to the top of your library. Hall of Heliod's Generosity taps for 1 and a white to put an enchantment from your graveyard on top of your library. Academy does the same for an artifact when you pay 1 and a blue and tap it. And with Unholy Grotto you can pay a black and tap it to put a zombie on top of your library from your graveyard. So first I want to talk to you about sagas. Phyrexian Scriptures with Hall of Heliod's Generosity lets you wipe the board of creatures every 3 turns. Birth of Meletis will generate good repeated value for a low mana investment. And no opponents really want to see you resolve the 3rd effect of Song of Freyalise multiple times in a game. With Unholy Grotto, a Corpse Augur plus a sack outlet draws you all of the cards, and Undead Augur does a minor version of this for less mana. Foul Mire Knight can even help out a bit, and give you a good recurable blocker while you're at it. Black has no shortage of sacrifice outlets, so don't forget about draining your opponents with Gary once per turn, and Newscraft Mob just keeps on coming back. And when it comes to artifacts and Academy Ruins, well, Everyone knows about Mindslaver, but don't be that guy. There are plenty of fair artifact sacrifice and recursion strategies out there, and Academy Ruins with Golos gives you consistent access to them. Alright, so we're on to our number 2, and that is Nesting Grounds. Nesting Grounds is a relatively new release from Ikoria that's a really unique land. It taps for 1 colorless, and you can also pay 1 generic mana and tap it to move a counter from target permanent you control onto another target permanent you control. Activate this ability only time you could cast a sorcery. So, want to play a cumulative upkeep deck? This will keep the age counters from becoming unbearable. Dreams of the Dead gives you easy creature recursion in blue. Elephant Grass is an alternative ghostly prison. You can play Infernal Darkness, Naked Singularity, or Ritual of Subdual if you're a jerk and you don't want anyone else to play Magic. Then there's Mystic Remora if this wasn't amazing enough already. Tombstone Stairwell generates a bunch of zombie tokens every turn. And remember Glacial Chasm? With this and Nesting Grounds, you're pretty much unkillable until someone can blow up a land. Might as well add Chisei to help you remove age counters even faster. But we're not even done with this land yet. What about charge counters? With Nesting Grounds, you can feed more charge counters from weaker cards like Sphere of Suns onto your better mana rocks like Everflowing Chalice and Empowered Auto Generator. And what about Planeswalkers? Obviously, Nesting Grounds isn't even close to as strong as things like Doubling Steven or even pure Imaginative Rascal, but tutorable Planeswalker loyalty manipulation is still valuable. If you have another Planeswalker on the battlefield, you can bump Nissa Vital Force or Garruk Cursed Huntsman's loyalty by 1 to ultimate them the turn you cast them. Or as long as you have another Planeswalker on the board that you can plus each turn to feed loyalty to another one of your Planeswalkers, you can blink a thing each turn with Aminato or create a bunch of constructs with Karn, Scion, Aversa. Tezzeret the Seeker can immediately tutor out an artifact with CMC 5 or less onto the battlefield. So Nesting Grounds is a really versatile card, and I'm sure I've only scratched the surface here of what it can do. But now it's time for our number 1 Build Around Me land with Golos as the commander. And that land is Drownyard Temple. Drownyard Temple taps for 1 colorless mana, and you can also pay 3 generic mana to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Drownyard Temple is gross when you build around it and can guarantee yourself access to it every game. And your opponents can't even deal with it. Who runs land exile? First, you can constant mists basically forever. Elvish Reclaimer can find any of your other game-winning lands basically for free. Army Ants is bad, but it will annoy your opponents if you can kill one of their lands each turn for only 3 mana. And as long as you've got a sacrifice outlet for your lands, Titania and Omnath make as many big elemental tokens as you want for just 3 mana each. Actually, this applies to pretty much every single landfall ability ever. Please don't do this. And let's not even talk about the Gitrog monster. Lands Matter decks are really strong, and with Drownyard Temple, your landfall or whatever deck now has 5 colors. So I hope you've maybe found some new ideas for how you might play Golos as your commander. Seriously, I've considered making this guy the leader for every single one of my decks, and it would probably work out just fine. He is just that versatile. Anyways, please like this video or subscribe if you found any of this useful. I'll be posting weekly videos describing all sorts of unconventional ways that you can build your commander decks, from budget alternatives to deck techs to top 10 lists. And thank you for watching.